The room was silent. Sunlight poured through the tall glass windows, brushing the golden curtains of the mansion bedroom. On the billionaire's expensive bed was Sophia. Her head was buried in the soft white pillow, her short breathing the only sound in the room. In her right hand was a mopping stick, gripped tightly like she had collapsed in the middle of cleaning. On the floor beside her was a forgotten mop bucket. Her black and white maid uniform was wrinkled, soaked slightly with sweat. Her small dark face looked tired, broken, peaceful. Then came the sound of soft leather shoes against marble. Johnson Anderson, the billionaire CEO, entered the room. He froze. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. His maid, sleeping on his bed with a mopping stick in her hand. For a moment, he didn't move. His eyes widened, filled with surprise, but his heart was calm. He took a slow step forward, then another. He looked down at her. She was barely 18, small, fragile, and from the way her body sank into the bed, she was deep in exhaustion. Not laziness. Real, deep exhaustion. Something told him this was no ordinary mistake. Gently, he bent down and tapped her shoulder. Sophia. Her eyes snapped open. She shot up as if lightning had struck her. She blinked twice, confused. Then her heart dropped. Her eyes locked with his. "Sir, please, please forgive me," she cried, dropping to her knees beside the bed. Her hands clutched the mop like it was her lifeline. "I didn't mean to, I swear. I haven't slept all night. I must have collapsed. Please don't sack me. Please, sir." Tears streamed down her cheeks. Johnson was quiet. His heart felt heavy. He hadn't expected this. He had seen many things in life, but never a maid so terrified just for falling asleep. He slowly knelt down beside her. "Sophia, why didn't you sleep last night?" he asked gently, his voice soft like a father's. She sniffled, looking away. "It's my mother," she whispered. "She's sick. I stayed up all night taking care of her. She kept coughing and shaking. I couldn't sleep, but I had to come to work today. It's the last day of the month. I need my salary to buy her medicine." Johnson's chest tightened. He leaned closer, looking into her teary eyes. "What about your father?" She swallowed hard. "He was a taxi driver. Armed robbers shot him on the road when I was 14. Since then, it's just me and my mum." Johnson said nothing. He simply listened. "I was the best student in my secondary school," she continued, tears falling faster now. "I wanted to be a doctor, but I gave up. No one helped. We had no money. I became a maid to survive. That's the only way I can buy drugs for my mum." Johnson stared at her. The room fell silent again. He finally stood up, wiped a tear from his cheek, and picked up his phone. "Driver," he said, "bring the SUV around. We're going somewhere." Sophia looked up, confused. "Sir? You're coming with me," Johnson replied. "I want to see your mother." Sophia's mouth opened, but no words came out. She just stared at him, wide-eyed, stunned. Minutes later, they were driving through the dusty roads of Ajagunle. The air was hot, and the car windows trembled with the sounds of Lagos. The billionaire had never been here, and what he saw made his heart break. Sophia led him to a small house, cracked walls, broken door, the smell of sickness in the air. Inside, Amanda lay on a thin mattress on the floor, her face pale, her body trembling with every cough. Her hair was rough, her lips dry. A faded wrapper covered her. Johnson dropped to his knees. He couldn't believe it. This was how they were living? The mother of a girl who had been wiping his floors? A woman who once had a future, now reduced to this? "Driver," he called with urgency. "Call an ambulance. Now." In less than 30 minutes, Amanda was on a stretcher, inside a private hospital in Victoria Island, one of the best in Lagos. Johnson paid everything in full. Sophia stayed beside her mother's bed, holding her hand, crying softly. She couldn't believe what had just happened. That morning, she was just a maid. Now, her mother was being treated like royalty. And Johnson, the man who shocked the world with kindness, sat beside her, gently asking doctors questions, making sure everything was perfect. But this was just the beginning. Amanda had been in the hospital for just 2 days, but already the change in her was like a miracle. Sophia sat beside her mother's hospital bed, watching as her eyes blinked open and her coughs grew softer. For the first time in months, her skin had a glow. Her lips were no longer cracked. She was beginning to smile again. It was faint, weak, but it was there. Sophia leaned in, brushing her mother's forehead. "Mummy, you're getting better." Amanda nodded slightly. "God sent an angel," she whispered, looking toward the glass door. And there he was, Johnson Anderson, in his neatly tailored navy blue kaftan, standing outside the ward, speaking quietly with the head doctor. He held a tablet in his hand, going over Amanda's test results like she was a member of his own family. When he noticed Sophia watching, he gave her a small smile and walked in. "I spoke with the doctors," he said gently. "She'll need a few more days, but everything looks good. The infection has started clearing." Sophia stood and gave a small bow. "Sir, I don't know how to thank you." He raised his hand. "No need for that, Sophia. You've already thanked me, by trusting me." She blinked back fresh tears. "Why are you doing all this for us? You didn't even know us." He took a slow breath and sat in the chair beside Amanda. "When my wife Cynthia died, giving birth to our 3rd child," he said, voice heavy, "I almost gave up. The house felt cold and empty. I had money, but it couldn't hold me at night. It couldn't raise my children. So I made a promise to myself. If ever I came across someone who needed help and I could give it, I would. Because the only thing worse than dying is living with the guilt of walking past someone you could have saved." Sophia's heart swelled. Amanda slowly reached out and held his hand, her voice trembling. "Thank you for seeing us. For not looking away." Johnson smiled, then stood. "Now get better, because once you're discharged, I'm not letting either of you go back to that place you call home. You'll move into the mansion. We have enough rooms sitting empty." Amanda blinked. "Sir," he waved her off. "Call me Johnson. And that's final." 3 days later, the black SUV pulled into the driveway of the Anderson mansion. The gates opened slowly, as Amanda, now walking steadily on her own, stepped out of the car and looked up at the grand house. She held Sophia's hand tightly. "God," Amanda whispered. Marble pillars stretched high into the sky. The garden was trimmed to perfection. A fountain bubbled gently in the center, and glass balconies sparkled in the sun. Sophia's mouth was open. She had cleaned the floors here. She had swept these steps. But now, for the first time, she was entering the front door, not as a maid, but as a guest. Inside, the housekeeper, Mrs. Ada, came rushing out, her eyes wide when she saw Sophia and Amanda. "Ah, this must be Madam Amanda. And Sophia, welcome, welcome. Please come in." Sophia almost forgot how to walk. Everything smelled like fresh lavender. The chandeliers sparkled like diamonds. Mrs. Ada led them up the staircase, then down a long hallway. "These are your rooms," she said, opening 2 grand doors. Sophia stepped inside and gasped. A queen-sized bed with silver trimming. A dressing table with shining mirrors. Silk curtains. Air conditioning. A walk-in wardrobe. She turned and looked at Amanda's room. Identical. "This can't be real," Amanda muttered. Just then, Johnson walked in. He was smiling warmly, his daughters, Sarah and Amaka, walking beside him. Sarah, the older one, was tall and quiet, about 15. Amaka, bubbly and playful, was 11. "Sophia, Amanda, I'd like you to meet my girls," Johnson said proudly. Sarah gave a shy smile. "Hi." Amaka stepped forward and hugged Sophia like an old friend. "You're so pretty. Can you help me with my science homework later?" Sophia was too stunned to reply. Johnson chuckled. "From today, this is your home too. The girls already know. Amanda, your job role is waiting. I spoke to HR at our headquarters. You said you were a data analyst, right?" Amanda nodded slowly. "You'll start next month, once you're fully strong." "Sophia, You're going back to school. Sophia blinked. Sir? I've hired a private tutor to prepare you for your university entrance exams, he said firmly. You're going to study medicine. You said that's your dream, right? Sophia's mouth dropped open. Yes. But. No buts. Dreams don't die in this house. We feed them until they live again. Tears filled Sophia's eyes. For the first time in her life, someone believed in her. Someone powerful. Someone who didn't see her as just a maid. The days passed quickly. Sophia began lessons with her private tutor every morning at 9 a.m., right inside one of the Anderson Mansion's study rooms. The tutor, Mr. Daniel, was firm but kind. And Sophia? She was brilliant. It didn't take long for Johnson to realize she had the mind of a surgeon. Amanda also started regaining her strength. By the third week, she was already learning new systems at the company. Johnson insisted she work only part-time until she was 100% recovered. One evening, Amanda stood by the kitchen counter, slicing vegetables with Mrs. Ada, when Johnson walked in holding a fresh grocery bag. The moment their eyes met, something soft passed between them. Need help? He asked. Amanda laughed. A billionaire offering to chop onions? That would shock your board of directors. He grinned. Let them be shocked. From that day, their friendship deepened. Dinners were no longer quiet. There was laughter. Amaka loved Amanda's cooking. Sarah felt safe enough to talk more. Sophia felt like she had a family again. But it wasn't until one Sunday evening, as they sat on the balcony watching the sun set over the city, sipping fresh juice and laughing over Amaka's dance performance, that Sophia noticed something. The way her boss looked at her mother. The way Amanda blushed every time their eyes met. She leaned over and whispered in Amaka's ear, "Do you think your dad likes my mum?" Amaka giggled. "I think he likes her a lot. He never smiles this much." A few weeks later, Johnson knocked on Amanda's door. She opened it, surprised. "Pack a bag," he said. "What?" "I want you to come with me to Abuja. It's just a 2-day business meeting. You used to be a data consultant before, right? I want your advice on this new analytics software we're considering." Amanda looked unsure. "I don't know, Johnson. Sophia said you were one of the best." Amanda sighed, smiling shyly. "All right, I'll come." That trip changed everything. It wasn't just business. They talked for hours in the hotel lounge. She told him about her childhood. He told her about losing Cynthia, his late wife. They shared meals, laughed at old jokes, and stayed up watching the stars from the hotel rooftop. By the time they flew back to Lagos, something had shifted. Something unspoken, but real. One night, as Sophia walked past the open balcony doors, she saw them again. Johnson and Amanda, sitting close on the wicker couch, sharing a glass of fruit juice and laughing quietly. Then Johnson turned to Amanda, reached into his pocket, and slowly knelt down on one knee. Sophia gasped. Amanda covered her mouth in shock. Johnson opened the small black box. Inside was a stunning diamond ring. "Amanda," he said gently, "I've loved your strength, your kindness, your spirit. You didn't just save my daughter's hearts. You healed mine. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Amanda's cheeks. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will." Sophia burst out from behind the curtain and ran to hug them both. The news of the engagement spread through the Anderson mansion like wildfire. From the gardener to the security guards, everyone was buzzing with joy. Even the chef made a surprise batch of vanilla cupcakes with, "Congratulations, Johnson, Amanda," written in blue icing. The girls, Sarah, Amaka, and Sophia, couldn't stop smiling. Sophia sat in the garden, watching Amanda through the window as she walked through the living room, humming softly. There was a glow in her mother's face, the kind Sophia hadn't seen in years. Amanda was wearing a lilac gown Johnson had gifted her the night he proposed. It flowed gently with her every step, making her look like a queen. Sophia wiped a tear from her eye, not of sadness, but of awe. Just a few weeks ago, she had been mopping floors. Her mother had been coughing in a tiny, crumbling room. Now Now her mother was about to marry one of the richest and kindest men in Nigeria. And Sophia herself was preparing for her university entrance exams with a private tutor and a brand new laptop. She still asked herself, is this real life? The wedding plans were simple but elegant, just like Amanda. They held the ceremony in the back garden of the Anderson mansion, beneath a giant white tent decorated with fresh hibiscus flowers and soft pink lights. Amanda wore an off-shoulder ivory gown that made her dark skin glow like honey under the sun. Her short natural hair was styled with gold pins. She walked down the aisle holding Sarah and Amaka on either side, with Sophia standing proudly at the altar, holding her bouquet. As the music played and Amanda stepped closer to Johnson, guests whispered in admiration, "Is that the maid's daughter?" "No, that's Dr. Sophia. To be." The vows were heartfelt. "I thought love was something you only get once," Johnson said, holding Amanda's hands. "But then, you came into my life and reminded me that healing brings love too." Amanda smiled through tears. "I was dying, but then kindness knocked on my door and brought me back to life." Sophia couldn't hold it in anymore. She cried. Happy tears. Healing tears. The applause that followed could have shaken the clouds. 9 months later, Amanda and Johnson welcomed a new addition to their family, a healthy baby boy named Emeka. The house erupted with joy. Sarah and Amaka rushed into the hospital room to see their baby brother, giggling and fighting over who would carry him first. Sophia stood at the foot of the bed, her hand over her heart. Amanda, now glowing with full beauty and strength, smiled at her daughter. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" Sophia nodded. "From the mattress on the floor to this." They both laughed quietly. Johnson walked in holding a giant teddy bear for Emeka. He kissed Amanda's forehead and said with pride, "This boy is going to grow up in a house filled with love." Sophia didn't let her new life distract her from her dreams. In fact, it made her hungrier. With the help of her tutor and Johnson's connections, she passed the University of Lagos entrance exam with flying colors. Her acceptance letter to study medicine and surgery came with a full scholarship sponsored by the Anderson Foundation. When she read the letter out loud in the living room, the entire house exploded in celebration. "I knew it!" Amaka shouted, dancing around. "I told you," Johnson said, lifting Sophia into a fatherly hug. Even little Emeka, barely able to babble, clapped along as Amanda wiped joyful tears from her eyes. That night, Johnson threw a mini send-off dinner in Sophia's honor. The backyard was decorated with fairy lights, and a jazz band played her favorite songs. Amanda wore a satin green dress. Johnson gave a speech that made everyone emotional. "From the day I saw her asleep in my room, I knew something was different," he said. "She wasn't just a maid. She was someone who carried so much weight and yet showed so much grace. Today, I'm proud to call her my daughter." Sophia stood up and gave him the longest, warmest hug. She didn't say anything. She couldn't. Her heart was full. University life was not easy, but Sophia thrived. She lived in a student apartment not far from campus but returned home every weekend. Her professors admired her intelligence. Her classmates respected her discipline. She became known as the girl who asked the most thoughtful questions during lectures. It was during a medical conference in Abuja that she met George, a brilliant, young neurosurgeon from Ibadan who had recently returned from the US. They met during a panel discussion about brain tumors and instantly clicked. They exchanged numbers, shared study resources, and soon began dating. George was humble, kind, and sharp-minded. Most of all, he loved Sophia for who she was before and after the fairy tale. When Sophia brought him home one weekend, Johnson took him on a long walk through the garden. "What are your intentions?" he asked in his usual calm tone. George smiled. "To support her, to grow with her, and, if she'll have me, to build a life with her." Johnson clapped him on the back. "Then you already have my blessing." A year later, after their graduation, George proposed to Sophia at the exact same spot where Johnson had proposed to Amanda. The entire family gathered in the mansion's garden, pretending it was just a dinner. George got down on one knee just as the fireworks lit the sky. Sophia gasped. "You planned this with them?" George chuckled. "Of course. You don't surprise the Andersons without permission." She said yes. Their wedding was breathtaking. Amanda, now more radiant than ever, gave a touching speech during the reception. "Sophia," she said, looking at her daughter with a proud smile, "you've always been a fighter. You never gave up, not even when the world gave you every reason to. I'm proud of the woman you've become." Sophia embraced her mother tightly. "I am who I am today, because you taught me how to be strong." Meanwhile, Amanda's own life had transformed beyond belief. She was now Director of Data and Intelligence at Anderson Holdings, working directly under Johnson. Her work trips took her across the world: Dubai, London, South Africa. She spoke at tech conferences, she led teams. But at home, she was still mummy to Emeka, still the heart of the mansion. Her love for Johnson grew deeper with each passing day. They still had quiet dinners on the balcony. They still exchanged handwritten notes tucked under pillows. They were a family built not on money, but on healing, second chances, and love. And just when life couldn't get better, it did. 3 years after Sophia's wedding, she gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl. She named them Jerry and Janet, after her late father and Johnson's late wife. When Amanda held her grandchildren for the first time, she broke into tears. "These are miracles," she whispered. Johnson stood beside her, carrying Emeka, now a talkative 4-year-old. "Full circle," he said. Amanda turned to him, her eyes full of emotion. "Do you realize? None of this would have happened if you didn't stop that day to wake up a maid sleeping on your bed." He smiled and kissed her forehead. "Sometimes, the most powerful doors are opened by the softest knocks." Sophia stepped beside them, holding her newborns. She looked around the mansion, the family, the laughter, and whispered, "Thank you, God, for kindness, for giving us a home." It was a bright Saturday morning when the past came knocking, literally. The Anderson mansion was unusually quiet. Amanda was in the garden trimming flowers with Sarah and Amaka. Emeka was riding his toy car through the long hallway, shouting with joy. Sophia, now a licensed doctor, had returned home for the weekend with George and the twins. The living room was full of baby giggles, bottles, and scattered toys. Then the doorbell rang. Johnson, who had just come back from his morning jog, wiped his face with a towel and walked to the door. The moment he opened it, he paused, then frowned slightly. Standing at the gate was a woman in a faded red wrapper and a nylon bag in hand. Her face looked rough from the sun, lips cracked, and her feet covered in dust. "Good morning, sir," the woman said in a shaky voice. I'm looking for Sophia." Johnson looked at her again, then turned back into the house. "Sophia," he called. "Someone's here to see you." Sophia walked out from the dining room, holding baby Janet in her arms. "Who is it?" The moment her eyes landed on the visitor, her steps froze. She blinked. Her chest tightened. It was her aunt, her father's only sister, Auntie Adana. The same woman who had mocked her mother for being weak and useless after her father's death. The same woman who refused to help them when they had no food, who took Sophia's father's pension money and vanished. The same woman who laughed and said, "Nobody wants to help a woman who coughs like a dying goat." Sophia took a deep breath. "What are you doing here?" Adana looked down at her feet. I heard about what happened. Your wedding, your success. I saw it on Facebook. I didn't know how to reach you." Sophia didn't say a word. "I was wrong, Sophia," the woman continued. "I thought your mother would die poor. I laughed at her. But I see now, God really lifted you." Johnson stepped aside, allowing the woman in. Amanda walked in from the garden with a gentle expression on her face. When she saw who it was, she froze, but only for a second. "Good morning, Auntie Adana," Amanda said calmly. The woman dropped to her knees immediately. "Amanda, please forgive me. I said horrible things. I left you to suffer. I didn't know this day would come. I didn't know you would survive." Amanda helped her up. "I forgave you a long time ago. I just never expected to see you again." Auntie Adana wept. "Please, my health is failing. My daughter threw me out. I have no one else." Sophia looked at her mother. then at Johnson. He nodded silently. "Let her stay," Amanda said softly. "If not for her, then for the mercy God showed us." They gave her the guest room near the staff quarters. And just like that, the past was back, but this time powerless to hurt them. Later that night, Sophia stood on the balcony, watching the moon reflect over the Anderson swimming pool. George came and wrapped his arms around her from behind. "You did well today," he said gently. "I didn't want to," Sophia replied. "But I kept thinking of what Dad would have done. He was kind to her, even when she mocked him." George kissed her forehead. "That's why your father lives on in you." She smiled, then looked out again. "I keep wondering, how did all this happen? How did we go from being the family people stepped on to becoming the ones who pull others up? Because you never stop being who you are. Kindness brought you here." Sophia turned to face him. "I want to do something big, George. I want to build a foundation, named after my father, one that helps girls like me, girls who had to give up school, girls who lost parents, girls whose dreams are still alive, but buried in pain." George smiled. "Then let's do it. Let's build it together." The Jerry Amanda Foundation launched 3 months later, a beautiful event held at a 5-star hotel in Lagos, hosted by Sophia and Amanda. The red carpet was full of cameras, news outlets, celebrities, and dignitaries. But the most important guests were the girls, the poor, orphaned, or abandoned girls who had never stepped inside a luxury hall before. Sophia wore a white suit with gold embroidery, holding the microphone as the crowd stood in awe. "I was once like them," she said, pointing toward the girls in the front row. "Lost, hungry, forgotten. But a stranger changed our lives with one act of kindness. Today, we stand as proof that hope is never too far." The hall broke into applause. Amanda stood beside her, clapping with tears in her eyes. Johnson stood beside the stage, holding a Mecca in his arms. He had seen Sophia clean his floors. Now he was watching her change the world. A week after the foundation's launch, Amanda received a phone call from an unknown number. "Mrs. Amanda Anderson?" the voice asked. "Yes?" "This is Dr. Emeka Adebayo from Abuja General Hospital. We found something unusual in your recent test scans. You came for a regular checkup, but we'd like you to come in for further testing." Amanda's heart skipped. She didn't tell anyone. Yet. Not Sophia. Not Johnson. She needed to be sure first. But she felt it. That old cough had returned. Just a little at night. And her chest sometimes felt tight. She booked a flight to Abuja the next morning, telling everyone she was visiting a friend. At the hospital, she sat still as the doctor went over her results. He looked up, expression serious. "Amanda, you have a tumor in your right lung. It's early stage, but we have to act fast." Amanda felt the air leave her body. "Not again. Not now." The doctor continued, "There's a good chance of recovery with surgery, but we must move quickly." She nodded, trying to breathe. When she returned to Lagos that evening, Johnson was already waiting. "You look tired," he said gently. Amanda smiled faintly. "Just a long day." He held her close. "Let's rest. You've done enough this week." Amanda leaned into him, her heart racing. She had lived a miracle once. She had seen her daughter rise from ashes. She had tasted love after death. But now, would she survive this storm? A few days later, Sophia found the hospital scan results in Amanda's handbag. She had come into her mother's room to help fold laundry, and the folder had fallen to the floor. She froze. "Lung mass. Urgent surgical intervention." Her knees buckled. "Mummy?" she whispered, holding the paper. Amanda walked in and saw her daughter crying with the scan in her hands. "Oh, baby," she said softly. Sophia turned around, her face covered in tears. "You were going to keep this from me? I didn't want to worry you. You're my mother. You think I'd rather not know? After everything we've been through?" Amanda sat on the bed, pulling her daughter close. "I'm scared, Sophia, but I'll fight, just like I did the first time." Johnson came in a few moments later, and seeing the tension, sat quietly. Sophia handed him the scan. His face changed. He didn't speak, just walked over to Amanda and knelt in front of her. "We're fighting this. Together." The next few weeks were full of hospital visits, tests, second opinions, and emotional prayers. The whole family rallied. Johnson halted all his travel plans. Sophia applied for temporary leave at her hospital. Even Amaka started skipping her swimming lessons to help cook for Amanda. One quiet morning, Amanda stood at the window in her robe, looking out at the garden. Sophia came and held her hand. "You once told me I gave you life again," Sophia said softly. "Now it's my turn to help give it back to you." Amanda smiled, a tear falling down her cheek. The air inside the Lagos University Teaching Hospital was colder than usual. Amanda lay still on the hospital bed, her face calm, her fingers gently wrapped around a string of prayer beads Sarah had given her that morning. The surgery was set to begin at exactly 10 a.m. Outside the operating theatre, the Anderson family waited. Johnson sat with his head bowed, silently praying. Sophia stood by the window, arms folded, her eyes fixed on the trees beyond the hospital walls. She wasn't just a daughter today. She was also a doctor. She knew what was at stake. George held her hand tightly. "She's strong," he whispered. "She's made it through worse." "I know," Sophia replied, trying to blink back the tears. "But this time, I'm scared." "She's not going anywhere," Johnson said firmly, looking up. "She made me promise we'd take Emeka to the beach once she recovered. I've already booked it. She'll make it." Amaka and Sarah sat beside each other on the bench, their heads leaning together. Amaka was with the nanny at home too, young to understand the weight of what was happening. Finally, the surgeon stepped out. Sophia's breath caught in her throat. Everyone rose to their feet. The doctor removed his mask. "She made it through," he said with a tired smile. "It was early stage, just as we hoped. We removed the tumor successfully. She's resting now. She'll need time to heal, but she's going to be okay." The room erupted in tears and gasps of joy. Johnson hugged Sophia so tightly she could barely breathe. "Thank you, God," she whispered. They were allowed into the room 2 at a time. Johnson went first, holding Amanda's hand gently. Her eyelids fluttered open. "You're here," she whispered. "I never left," he replied, pressing her hand to his cheek. "Did we win?" He smiled. "We always do." 3 months later, the family gathered in the grand living room of the Anderson mansion for what looked like a surprise birthday party. But it wasn't just for Amanda. It was also for the Jerry Amanda Foundation's 1-year anniversary. The event had become the most talked-about charity platform in Nigeria. Over 120 girls were now receiving scholarships and care, thanks to Sophia's vision and Johnson's funding. Amanda was stronger than ever. Her beauty was once again effortless. Flawless brown skin glowed in the evening light. Her short hair curled neatly, and her soft peach gown shimmered slightly under the chandeliers. She stood at the center of the room with a microphone, looking at the crowd, but her eyes settled on the faces that mattered most. Sophia, George, Johnson, Amaka, Sarah, and little Emeka, who sat at the corner licking the frosting off his cupcake. "I've stood on many stages in my life," Amanda began, her voice calm and rich. "But no moment has ever been as precious as this one." She paused. "Not too long ago, I was lying on a thin mattress in a damp room, coughing my life away, ready to die. My daughter, Sophia, was out mopping floors, trying to save me. And none of you knew her then. She was invisible to the world, but not to God." Sophia wiped a tear from her cheek. Amanda continued. "A billionaire walked into his room one afternoon and found a maid sleeping on his bed. And instead of anger, he showed her kindness. That one act didn't just save her, it saved me. It gave our lives meaning." She turned to Johnson. "That day, you didn't just help us, you rebuilt us. You gave me the chance to live again, to love again, to become a mother, a wife, a woman full of hope." She stepped back as applause filled the room. Then Johnson stepped forward. "There's something I'd like to do," he said, pulling out a navy blue document file. "Amanda, Sophia, this is the full title deed to a new building in Surulere. It will be the permanent headquarters of the Jerry Amanda Foundation." Gasps echoed. Johnson smiled and handed the file to Sophia. No more renting office space. This foundation has changed lives. You deserve a home of your own to do more. Sophia hugged him tightly, whispering, "I love you, Dad." It was the first time she ever called him that. He didn't reply with words. He just held her, his heart too full. 1 year later, Sophia was now one of the lead pediatric doctors at one of the best hospitals in Lagos. Her name carried weight. She had saved dozens of lives, but on this particular morning, something else was about to save hers. She was in the middle of a ward round when she felt dizzy. She held the side of the bed, steadying herself. Her colleague, Dr. Ugo, looked over. "Are you okay?" "Yeah, maybe I skipped breakfast." But by noon, she vomited twice and had to sit in the staff lounge. George came rushing in. "I'm taking you to get checked right now," he said firmly. An hour later, they were in a clinic. The doctor smiled brightly after the scan. "Congratulations, Dr. Sophia. You're pregnant. With twins." George stood frozen. Sophia's mouth opened in shock. "Again? Twins? This? Again?" They both laughed, overwhelmed. "2 girls," the doctor added. "Both strong, just like their mother." The Anderson family was overjoyed. Johnson nearly dropped his phone when he heard the news. "More twins?" he laughed. "We need to expand the mansion at this point." Amanda hugged Sophia so tightly, tears of joy rolling down her face. "This is God's reward," she said, "for every tear you ever cried." 9 months later, Sophia gave birth to 2 beautiful baby girls, Nora and Nadia. George held them like they were made of gold. "Welcome home," he whispered. Amanda stayed by Sophia's side throughout the recovery. She bathed the babies, fed them at night, told them bedtime stories. Watching Amanda now, one would never guess she had ever battled for her life. She was strong, joyful, and full of purpose. And Johnson, he was the proudest grandpa alive. He had built empires, sat on boards, addressed presidents. But nothing brought him more joy than holding his grandkids. "This," he told Amanda one night, "is the only wealth I'll ever need." 10 years later, the Anderson mansion was alive with the sounds of music, laughter, and celebration. Today marked the 15th wedding anniversary of Johnson and Amanda. Friends, staff, and family gathered under the giant white canopy set up in the garden. Sophia, now 36, stood proudly in a white and gold lace gown, watching as her twin daughters danced with their little cousin Emeka Jr. George stood beside her, his arm around her waist. Amanda and Johnson stepped onto the platform. Everyone stood and clapped. Amanda raised her microphone. 15 years ago, I was nobody. I had no job, no money. I was sick, abandoned, and hopeless. But a stranger gave me a chance. A billionaire gave me his heart." She paused and turned to Johnson. "You didn't just save me. You gave me the courage to dream again. You gave my daughter a father. You gave our story an ending the world didn't see coming." Johnson took the mic. "And you," he said with a smile, "gave me peace. You brought me back from the darkness. You made me believe in love again. People think wealth is measured in gold or land. But I know now true wealth is found in the people you raise, the ones you lift, and the love you leave behind." The crowd cheered. Sophia came forward, holding a special box. "We have one final gift," she said. She handed it to Amanda. Inside was a golden plaque. Amanda Johnson Anderson, the woman who rose, the mother who fought, the wife who healed, the queen of our home. Amanda gasped. Johnson placed a kiss on her cheek. As the sun set over the mansion, the family gathered for a group photo. Amanda sat in the center, surrounded by Sophia, George, Sarah, Emeka, and the 4 grandchildren. The photographer counted 1, 2, but before he could finish, Amanda raised her hand. "Wait," she said. She turned to Johnson, took his hand, and whispered just loud enough for the family to hear. "Remember the day you found Sophia sleeping in your room?" He smiled. "I remember everything. That one act gave birth to this moment." And just like that, they smiled for the photo capturing, not just a picture, but the journey of healing, kindness, and transformation. What is your view about this story? Where are you watching from? If you enjoyed this story, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.